Welcome back to another episode of the Winners Club podcast, where even when we don't win, we learn, and learning is the best form of winning. Come on, guys. I got a real special guest. This guest started off from investment banking, right, which is already hard enough, to private equity, which is even harder. And then he goes to find multiple different companies very successfully. And I think that's the key, is that it's successful. So now I'm very excited to bring on none other than Kira Shishkin, who's going to be able to share his journey, some of the wins, some of the struggles. I want to actually dive more into the struggles, if you don't mind. I like to learn from other people's mistakes. And so I think today's episode is going to be nothing short of an amazing, amazing episode, guys. Well, thank you so much, Kira. Thank you for joining us. If you can give us a little spiel about yourself, because I know I left out a lot. Please share that with the crowd, please.
Wow, well, Brian, PJ, thank you for having me. It's delightful to be welcomed on your show. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, I'm Kira Shishkin. I am sort of a multiple-time entrepreneur. I come from a finance background, but I'm really more than anything now on this mission to build informed.now, which is really a company that's, it's got a mission of saving America by repairing the information infrastructure of this country. And the culture has been suffering, the society has been getting polarized, and we're looking for ways to really put people back on the same page. And so we do it with a very simple product. We text news without noise to folks by, literally by text, by SMS. But behind a simple solution is a grand mission of having folks really kind of speak the same language again, the same language of facts, and not be influenced by anything that they read. So that's been a big focus for me these days. But you've touched on my background pretty generously. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Question for you. I mean, I don't watch the news. I'll be honest with you. I had a coach about over a decade ago, and he told me the worst thing you can do is watch the news, especially first thing in the morning. And that's crazy, because for the longest time, my whole life, my mom and dad, when we would wake up for school, KTVU, Channel 2 News would be on the background, and, they'll go over the traffic and what happened over the last couple of days. And I realized that it was just very negative, right? So I understand people love the news. I just don't watch it. But let me ask you this. What makes news biased? Now, I don't know too much about it. I know some people like Fox. I know some people like CNN, but I don't watch it. So please kind of share with me, like, where does the bias come in from? And how do you even know if it's bias and or not,
Yeah. Well, I love that you mentioned that you don't read, you don't watch news. I think that's really important to what we're trying to accomplish here. I think in the US, when we say news, it's become synonymous over time with not actually news, but news commentary, right? When we interact with news content most of the time, you see these talking heads that sort of, narrate the news to you, and they have these facial expressions, and they have these, words that the word choice that they use, and they inevitably tell you how to feel about certain phenomenon. And obviously it divides into multiple camps. We have this sort of bipartisan sort of my team blue, my team red mentality in the country. And the news certainly aligns with that, right? We've got the Fox on one side, we've got you can call CNN, NBC maybe on the other side. It's hard to really tell because they also shift and move a little bit sometimes. But it's sort of it's a narrative, right? You're being told news as a story that either aligns with your, the red or the blue team. And it's very like self-affirming. It's like, yeah, like my vision of the world is affirmed because I'm reading the story that is celebrating like what I already believe in. I mean, that's the bipartisan bias. Yeah. But I think to a great degree, what we're doing is we're not just saying, let's make news unbiased or, let's make news, more objective. We're actually trying to change all these different things about news. We're trying to make it less full of ads or sensationalism or verbosity or bias alongside that. We're trying to make news much more accessible and digestible in the way that over the last few decades they haven't been. You have to kind of go and do this research and have to read probably multiple times, multiple sides to figure out where do you stand. And it's exhausting. It's so exhausting that most Bryans have stopped reading news altogether. Because why would they? It's a toxic experience.
Yeah. So do you have a team of editors or AI that will kind of, scan through the news and then give it to me as in a like just straight facts and remove all the other stuff, or what does that look like? Because
That's exactly right.
how do you make something unbiased? Because technically, aren't as as reporters, we're always going to be a little bit biased.
And I love that you mentioned that. I think that's part of what I was mentioning. Like, when folks in America say news, they mean news commentary most of the time, which is longer form. It's people sort of telling you their interpretation, their analysis, quote unquote, their commentary around the news item. We actually do sort of the opposite, where we try to say less instead of saying more. Which at some point you're right to point out that as soon as you have a little bit more space to talk, you wind up introducing inevitable perspective because at some point you just run out of saying the fact itself, and then you start commenting and introducing other adjacent evidence that will turn a perspective one way or another. So what we do is we actually reduce the, so to speak, just the actual verbiage of what we say, and we try to say less. We have such a minimalist approach to the news we communicate, where it all fits within one single text. We never text more than once, and we don't text on the weekend. We are very, very like digested into just exactly what you need to know. In those bullets, which we essentially text you bullet points, we contain the entire meaning of the issue, not just of a single article, sometimes hundreds of articles. We digest the entire issue into one bullet point, right, or a couple of sentences, none longer than a paragraph, and we stop short of saying what you should feel about it or if this is a bad or a good thing. We just tell you the basics of what happened, where, when, and maybe there's an adjacent context to it, but it doesn't attempt to persuade you of anything. And I think that's what's been lost in American information infrastructure, is just the news wire on its own. No one has access to that anymore. No one has access to facts anymore. You only have access left and right to commentary around those things. And that's not what we need.
So is this AI driven though, or how are you able to get out all the news? I mean, because there's so many articles, right? I mean, you Google one topic, it'll be five different reporters and all that stuff. So there's no way you guys can read through all of it and still report on it quickly enough, right? So can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think that's a really important part of how we function. It's worth comparing to, like an AI company and comparing to like a legacy media company. On one hand, the legacy media company cannot really read 10,000 articles an hour. That's a human rights violation if you make your team do that. It's not something that's really feasible. But on the other hand, the AI company cannot take responsibility for their output. If you're using Perplexity, if you're using ChatGPT today, it's very much use at your own risk. And you sign those things when you use the product. You can ask questions, but it's going to hallucinate. And it's going to hallucinate actually on news-related content 80% of the time, which is really high, and it's not getting any better really, because functionally large language models, which is all the models we know, they don't reason. They guess the best next word, and you can't really trust something so factual as news to a model that any answer it gives, you're gonna have to double check, triple check. You can't be sure. So one side doesn't have the capacity, the other side cannot take responsibility. We combine the best of both worlds, where a lot of the process that we run, we think of ourselves really as a research company. A lot of our research is done with AI agents and ability to engage content where we're reading huge volumes on any given issue, like 24/7. And then the other side is we always have what we call a human in the loop model of a team that takes a look and says, we can sign off on this. And we as a company take full responsibility for every word, every character that we put out there. So we maintain the extended capacity of an AI company with the responsibility of an accountable team. And that's the human in the loop that we pioneer.
Wow. And how big is Inform now? How many employees and staff do you have?
Yeah, we are hovering number less than 10.
Wow.
I like that.
Honestly,
I
I
wanted
love.
to ask, Kira, I was curious when it comes to, building an amazing company like you're doing right now, how do you find the talent for those who you want to work aside with to build this company?
Absolutely. I feel like, the talent is everywhere. So I spent the last couple of years in San Francisco, which has been terrific. I'm in LA now currently, but I find that it's not just California, it's not just the US. There really is, incredible talent all around the world, and you just have to open the door wide enough for that to happen. So we are proud to have employees from practically every continent, and I think to really trying to find a talent, not find the convenience of like, oh, they live in California or they live next to me. It doesn't really matter. We've always been built as a remote first company, which I think has always been able to help us attract folks that are just like literally world class talent because we aren't constrained by like our locale. We take a pretty hardcore approach to hiring. Like we accept easily less than 1% of applicants, and we really focus on like show us that you can do the work, right? We have interview questions where we say, okay, well, imagine tomorrow, it's a high growth early stage company. Tomorrow you're in charge of this entire process. So what are you going to do, right? Because this is not a hypothetical situation. This is literally what we're hiring for. And so they need to communicate a vision and a confidence and like an ability to execute on it that is going to be convincing. And not a lot of people can. A lot of people want a job because they want to be told what to do and get paid for it. We need someone who can take so much ownership that they can run an entire autonomous piece within a company. And the bar is pretty high, but so far we've been able to attract some great folks.
So during the interview process, you will actually have them demo, like run through the scenario, run through what you would do, the whole shebang during that interview, or do you put them on a 1 week probation where they work for you and then you can kind of see how they work?
Yeah, I mean, this might be pretty hardcore, but we do all of the above. Where when we interview, we put a lot of emphasis on like, all right, before interview 2 and 3, go and actually like make the deck, make the presentation of what is the strategy, what is the like, how will you own this piece of the business, and then come back, present it to us, or send it to us async. And whenever we hire, we always start with these probations. All right, because it's not hard if you know this is the right person. It's not hard to then double down, remove all the barriers, and let them run. But we do have a pretty sort of long ramp on into the team where we're very cautious, right? With because every person on a small team changes the culture, changes the speed, and it really matters to us to get just the perfect person. We'd rather grow slower. Because for us, growth doesn't look like overhiring at all.
Yeah.
Then hire the wrong person by accident because it's harder to get rid of them.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, what you brought up reminds me of when I brought on PJ. I made him follow me around and work for me for a week. And I said, film, edit, do the X, Y, and Z, and then create the product. And let me see it. And then I actually had multiple people at the same time. I said, I gave them the same week, and I went out with them, one person on Monday, Tuesday, I think a Wednesday, and then I was like, okay, let me see the work. Because everybody sounds great in an interview. And I bring this up because at the Winners Club podcast, people are now, entrepreneurial. They're trying to hire. They're trying to figure out what's the best way. And I think I have to agree with you, Kira, that the best way is to put them to work and see what they produce.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I think everything he said is just hits it spot on, right? I mean, you go to a job to work, not to talk, right? So the test should be on your work, right? Not how much you could sell me or whatever that is, right? And I really do like what Kira said also, right? For all the listeners, is to just know that not all the good talent is in US or in California or in your state, right? Sometimes you need to open your mind up to know that there are great people who might be in India or Germany or Chile or any of that, right? So guys, with the hiring stuff, man, like these guys know what they're talking about.
I have another question for you because you went from investment banking to private equity. I mean, you were probably making a lot, right? And so now when it came to starting, I heard you say something earlier that you started this because you want to basically make change, make a bigger impact on how news is portrayed. It sounds like now it's more of a passion than anything else. Is that kind of true, or is this just another business that kind of came to you and you think you can kind of monetize?
Absolutely. I mean, I really think this has been the most mission-driven project I've ever worked on. Not to say that previously I found a lot of purpose in my work, but right now, with what's happening in America, It's just this problem that like American culture is hurting substantially, right? There is this, you could say there's a civil war that's unfolding right now in the country. It's an information civil war. It's a cultural civil war. And right now we're living through it, so it's hard for us to name it. But I think our grandchildren will look back in the history books and say, wow, that was the civil war of 2020s, right? That was a crazy era that they were living through. And I, as like an immigrant, someone who has come to love this country and not take it for granted, and someone who really enjoys and values being here, like I want to help. And to me, leveraging my background, my experience, my skills, my kind of awareness, it's exactly how I'd like to help. I'd like to kind of save people from polarization, save people from radicalization, and a lot of disenfranchisement goes alongside there as well. Because when people drinking from like a poisoned well, like no one's winning. Like people are just suffering. And I think the analogy of a poisoned well is very apt for how like messed up our media ecosystem is. And so yeah, it felt very mission forward. Like this is something I want to do, and that sense of purpose motivates me so much more than you mentioned money, right? Or you mentioned other things, prestige and career. This is so much more motivating.
I'm curious though, do you run ads or how do you monetize how does a company monetize really?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really important consideration because I mean, I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it's definitely not the way other sort of, it's different from the rest of media. The rest of media runs advertisements. And so the news is free, right? But you're not a customer. The advertiser is the customer. You are the product being sold to the advertiser. The whole thesis behind Inform is that's what messed up the news, right? Is when this started happening, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that's what inevitably like made news unreadable and unbearable because they were optimizing for incentives that were the advertisers' incentives, not the readers. And the advertisers' incentives are not just different, they're opposite from the readers. They want to keep you there for longer. They want to show you more ads. They want to distract you. They want to increase your time of looking at ads, which is not what a reader wants to do. For us, that's probably the biggest innovation is like, can we put the reader first? And we have not met any readers that are dying to see ads. So for us, we are never going to show ads. That's like part of our core ethos behind the company. So at the same time, the only way to put the reader first is to only accept the revenue from the reader, right? As soon as we introduce a sponsor, an investor, some sort of a foundation or an advertiser behind our work, we start optimizing for their incentives. We only take revenue from the user, and so folks pay us a subscription. So it sounds like people are like, oh, I don't want to pay for news. News should be free. Well, guess what? News are not free. News have never been free. News commentary, where you are being sold to the advertiser, well, that was a free experience, but you're not a customer of that experience. It's not optimized for you. It's misleading you. It's overwhelming you. It's soliciting you. This is actually news with you in mind. And yeah, that costs money because to do that, we need to reject the revenue from all the other guys who are trying to pay us.
Yeah. I mean, it's no different than before, you used to pay for the you put a quarter into the machine and you pulled out the newspaper. So same thing. That makes sense. I mean, I like that because now I know it's unbiased, right? Like that, I would feel if you had taken money from other companies, I would be like, this isn't unbiased, right? Because now it's like you have their agenda to worry about because, hey, they're giving you $100,000 or $200,000 a month to start showing their stuff, So kudos to you, Kira. I like that.
I think it's cool, man. To be honest, like as we're just talking about it more and hearing more of your mission, right, and your guys' like purpose, I'm actually really sold. I'm like, that's cool then. Like a place where there's a non-biased opinion where I could just develop my own, right, and no one's throwing monies at these guys to tell me buy a Pepsi or all this. I think it's amazing, and I think
nobody has to throw money at you for you to buy a Pepsi, PJ.
Okay, hey, bro, this is not the point. It's not the point. Okay, but I think the big message here, right, is that like, hey, when you have a company that has a real mission to change the world and you guys stand true to it, like people will feel that and people will notice it. I mean, you just saw Brian say, oh, wow, I like that. And you saw me say it right after too, like, wow, like I really do like this, right? So guys, big mission, big money, okay?
But Kira, I have a question for you. So right now it's text. Like I get a text, I click it, I open, I read the news. Why I go that route and not an app like everybody else?
That's right, because if you think about it, part of our mission is reducing the noise that's been created and manufactured, in many ways by the advertiser incentives, but it also in many ways is by the proliferation of like, let's build another app, let's build another email kind of send out. Nobody wants the 600th app on their phone, right? How many apps do we have? If we don't open our phones right now and show them, I think we have way too many apps to sort of like have bandwidth for. I think email has been dead for longer than we can imagine. Nobody reads email, right? Going to the website, nobody goes to websites because everyone's on the phone. And so a lot of these channels that are popular are so oversaturated that to be another, voice trying to like compete or be in that environment is not really worth it, because not only is it a bad business decision because it's so crowded, but it's also, back to our mission, we're trying to be the most like low friction, low, not demanding solution. And the power of SMS is that it's extremely privacy preserving. We are not able to structurally, because technology doesn't allow it as SMS infrastructure, to track your behavior, to track your clicks, to put cookies everywhere, to see your activities. That is like pretty nefarious activity, and it's all with the advertiser in mind. We structurally cannot do that, and we love to have a channel that so like it so honors the privacy that we absolutely take seriously, right? The other element is you don't need an account. You don't need to remember a password. You don't need to really do anything. You really don't even have to tell us your name, right? We don't need to know it. For you to get the value of our work, you can be completely anonymous and you can have no accounts, no passwords. And I think that's really important because all this other software like demands your data, demands your information, violates your privacy, and is trying to like take up more and more space in your life, sell you other things, sell your data to somebody else. We structurally cannot even do that in the way we function. And the choice of our channel, choice of our technology speaks to the sort of how seriously we take our mission, right?
That's pretty good. But from a business perspective, if you don't have a name and I put like Joe Schmo, but I put my credit card in, theoretically, can't I hit a chargeback or something like that? Doesn't that open you up from a, this is maybe not related to the actual app itself, but like from a business perspective, doesn't that kind of make it so that people can just kind of cancel the subscription faster or anything like that?
We try to be as easy to leave as we are to join, which is
Mm-hmm.
also so different from every other company and every other media business, right? Because sometimes you have to like, click around a website for 30 minutes and reset and reauthorize. And guess what? You have to call somebody. Then you call somebody and you wait in line and then you're like, hey, can I please cancel this freaking thing? Like, wait a second, let me transfer you to the cancel department. And it's just like, let me leave. This is messed up. For us, it's so easy to leave. We don't try to hold people, right? All you have to do is just text stop. Right? Or any other word. We're pretty emotionally aware. You can text us, cancel, say like, please stop texting. You can say anything. And everything's over. You don't need to remember an account. You don't need to do anything. It's just automatic. And we believe that when it's easy to leave, it's easy to come back. And we want to have that, freedom with our users. We were just always thinking about if we were using our product, ourselves, what would we want it to be? And that's what we wanted it to be.
Damn. That's amazing. I really like that. I mean, the fact that it's, just everything you talked about of like the ease of using text over everything else, like the email, like the no logins. It's like, yeah, they can leave quicker, but that is a good thing, right? Like people think highly of that because me, like, I hate when I have to call this person, do that, log in, and then, oh, there's no cancel payment thing. So I have to email them. So I think that's really cool. Just the ease to come in and the ease to leave is a really nice touch.
Yeah, I just remember there's this one company. It took me like a year and a half to cancel. Like there was nothing you can do. You, oh, you have to send an email. Nobody responds. And then you know what the mess up thing was? Even when I called my credit card to have like to file a complaint, the freaking credit card company sided with them. So I was like, oh, dude, it was the worst. But that's a topic for another story. But you know, So this is, you founded a couple of companies. I want to ask you, because starting a company is difficult. It's very hard, and it's easier to just go and work for somebody else sometimes. What's one important advice to give some of the early founders, like when they want to give up, or I don't know, your biggest lesson for them when
Totally.
starting a company?
I mean, I think for someone who's aspiring founder, like hasn't founded yet, just start. Just like shut up and start. Like don't wait until it's perfect. Don't, polish things in isolation until like the big reveal moment. Don't do that. Like get a half-baked product that's not ready and just ship it to the market and show it to people, start shopping it around because even if you take this time, and you can be an aspiring founder or you can be a founder early on in the journey, if you have this mentality that I think a lot of formal education like kind of programs us into us of like you work in isolation, you work in privacy, and then there's this big reveal, a big deadline, and then like it's a big splash. Stuff doesn't really work that way, and like that's actually the worst way of operating. Waiting until something is perfect, something is polished, and then finally you release it to the wild. I think the thinking is completely reversed when it's coming to like early stage venture building. You want to absolutely get the scrappiest, barely functional thing that looks like what you're trying to offer and just push it out to the market. Because until it's out there and people are looking at it, it's not real. And the only feedback that will shape what you're building into reality is real market and user and customer feedback. And so you'd rather put something out there that's so scrappy and so broken, but people can tell the value proposition that it brings. So people say, hey, I want to use this, but it's broken. Like, hey, I want to use this, but can you add these features? But then you're like, okay, like I understand what people are finding valuable. I understand what the feedback is. And then you continue to iterate all the time. But if you're just waiting for months while you're crafting the perfect version of when you want to put out there, you are wasting time because you think it may be perfect and then you put it out in the market and only once it hits the ground, like, do you actually get real feedback? And turns out the thing that you've been perfected for a few months may be just as useless to people as maybe something that's, less perfected, but people are already responding. You're getting that loop. So just start, just do it, and push out something, deploy something broken. Don't wait for it to be perfect.
What I'm hearing from this is that you got to have tough skin too, because people are going to criticize you no matter what you do. They're going to tell you your product sucks, or that was useless, or that feature wasn't very good, and you have to have heart, like a tough skin to be like, look, it's okay. It's a prototype, or we're in the early stages, so we'll gather the information and we'll make the necessary changes. But I think that's what people are scared. I think people don't start because of they want to add all these features because they want to come out to market and say, "Oh my god," and get all the praises. But realistically, guys, everything, if I can go back to all the companies I started, it was all negative stuff. And then you tweak, right? Your coffee sucks. I think when I was doing real estate, your pitch sucks, your cold calling sucks. Everything sucks about you doing. Like, okay, well, let me just get better. And eventually you do get better. But I think people, you know, they try, they practice, they create this product, and then they put all that energy into it, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then they come to market and then they get destroyed. People go in and they say, you suck, or that whole product sucks. But because they spent 2 years to build it, like now their feelings get really hurt. Whereas people like you and I, Kira and PJ, we're like, when people say your stuff sucks, I'm like, great, I only spent 2 days on it, right? I
Yeah,
had to
I'm
get
gonna
it out to the
fix it.
market, and now I'm fixing it. And then we just keep constantly tweaking and learning and redoing. And then I don't know. And then eventually, hopefully, you end up with a good product. I think we have. I think what you're building, Kira, ended up being pretty good. But let me ask you this: when you built, obviously Informed, was it an instant success, or was it like a slow grind? Like, you got, I mean, hypothetically here, like, did you get one subscriber, two subscriber, three? Was it slow, or was it like boom, you got a bunch of people paying and signing up?
Absolutely. I think, and this touches on the previous question too, is we did something that, a lot of people feel really uncomfortable with, But I think that like is one of the most powerful things you can do. It's just it takes some courage to do it. We shipped something and we had nothing, right? We put out a value proposition, a sign up list, right, a waiting list, and a bunch of like very simple, actually physical advertisements in San Francisco. And we said fast, objective news for busy people, right? And it was a QR code. So all it was is the value proposition, right? It's just like, what is it? It's fast, objective news for busy people. There were no images. It was just that. It's like informed, fast, objective news for busy people and a QR code. We had nothing. We had no product. We didn't have a team. We were in the very early innings of like figuring out who even is attracted to this. And that is like the extreme version of shipping something that's not ready. We shipped something that wasn't even there. And by the time we started getting these people signing up, filling out a form, being like, yeah, I'm interested, like put me on the waiting list. We started collecting all this information, like, hey, how old are you? Where do you live? Are you a girl? Are you a boy? Are you a professional? Are you a student, right? We started getting this information before we had anything at all. So by the time, we were building, we knew who we were building for. And we knew kind of like, because we asked them these questions like, hey, why are you signing up for this? Like, what's so valuable about it? Are you trying to save money? Trying to save time? Trying to save something else? At that point, we had this information from like our prospective customer that literally clicked on the link, right? Clicked on the QR code. And by the time we had something to ship, we already had this base of people. And so it was sort of in the middle of like, it wasn't, huge viral from the beginning, but we started building the base before we built the product. And I think that is, harks back to your earlier question, but I think that's also been the case with Informed. We really started shipping things before we had anything. And that allowed us, by the time we had the product, to grow much faster.
I like that. Out of curiosity, you have an extensive background. Is Informed venture backed or is it self-funded?
Informed is intentionally bootstrapped, self-funded, because, I just think there's this huge story in Silicon Valley for sure, but I think generally in like US entrepreneurship culture that like, unless you are venture backed, then you're not legit. You're not legitimate you're not a real business, right? Or you're not a serious business. And I'm just so excited as someone who's built, funded companies in the past, someone who's actually invested in companies in the past. I'm really excited to just break that mold because it couldn't be more wrong. And I think the story, right, the narrative of venture that like you need venture capital in order to be serious is very harmful. And so, there's no intention to raise money for us. There's no need to raise money for us given our profitability. Like there's no spirit of like we need to go raise venture funding. And I think we're going to, steer in that direction to sort of break that mold that you can build a very successful, very impactful company without necessarily like, buying into this whole venture narrative.
Yeah. I don't even know what venture narrative is. Nobody has ever given me money. PJ won't even give me money. He just takes it.
I tried.
PJ just takes my money, He thinks we're venture backed. We're not, PJ.
Shit, I thought we were, bro. Let me repel my Lambo request,
So I've read somewhere, Kira, that you reviewed 600 plus startups. What pattern did you see in the most successful ones?
Totally. I mean, I think I reviewed definitely way more than 600 startups. And, I think that may be approaching, maybe 10 times that at this point. But I think the proximity, or that's not the right word, I would put it this way, the understanding of the customer problem, right? The customer empathy, the empathy with who you're building for and what your problems are is the single most important sort of signal of, what could be a successful company. Because it sounds so simple when you kind of say it out loud, but it's the most widespread problem is that people aren't, or entrepreneurs aren't actually building for the customer, right? They may be keeping other incentives in mind, right? They want to look like a founder. They want to have those optics. They want to look good to their investors if they have investors. Investors may have other pressures, right? There may be sort of platform considerations. There may be their own ego of like, I want to build this type of product and it's going to do this type of thing. They're like their own dream haze. Like the only legitimate way to build a business is to get extremely like in the dirt with the world of the customer, whoever your customer is, and empathize and understand and feel and live their problem so that you know exactly what you're solving and you never lose sight of that. Like the only voice that matters in the building of a business is the voice of your customer. And I think in like the Silicon Valley lore, we call this customer empathy, we call this customer obsession, we call this being customer centric. But I think that is the most important quality and pattern. And you can see it. Like you can tell when a deck has this understanding or a company has this understanding because you can just ask them like, hey, tell me about your customer. Tell me about these profiles. Tell me, have you experienced these issues? Right? It's not hard to test, but I think that is the most important thing to test for is this like, how well do you understand the problem you're trying to solve? Because everything else are trinkets on top of understanding that.
I love it. I love it. I think that's your golden nugget right there, guys. Look for that, and you're gonna be golden in your next company. I asked because I'm actually meeting with a bunch right after this, and I'm looking to get into some kind of AI, some softwares. We're making a couple of offers on a few companies, and so I'm always like looking at the founder and saying, this guy, is worthy of my money, But Kira, how can people find out more about Informed if they want to, sign up for your unbiased news?
That's right. Well, for any news minimalists, media minimalists out there who want to stop eating the noise that we're constantly fed, would love to get feedback on our work to get invite you as a user. And we have a really simple website. It's informed.now. And so you can find us easily there. We have a very simple interface. And for anyone who is very phone friendly, you can actually text us. We operate the biggest news toll-free number in the US. And you can basically text join to 844-406-info, which is 4636. Right? So 2 ways to join us. Go to the website, inform.now, or text join to 8.
You heard it there, guys. Well, Kira, appreciate you so much. Thank you for joining the Winners Club podcast. I learned a lot, and I hope to get you on a follow episode when you start your next company. Or when this company, I don't know, this company, I know you're not going to sell it because obviously that will make it biased, but I can't wait to hear what you build next.
We'll
I appreciate
celebrate.
you.
All right.
Yes,
Have a good one, guys. Peace.